Hi guys, and welcome to Gentle History for Deep Sleep. Tonight you find yourself standing at the mouth of a frozen cave, where the air bites gently at your skin and a tiny flame flickers like a small golden star in a world of endless white. You can smell smoke drifting upward, feel the cold stone beneath your feet, and hear the distant sounds of the winter wilderness waiting outside. You're about to spend a night where fire is not decoration, comfort, or something you turn on with a simple click. It is the difference between warmth and a very uncomfortable lesson in ancient survival. You probably won't survive this night without help from that little dancing flame. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me where you're listening from and what time it is where you live. Now, dim the lights. You step slowly into the cave, carrying the quiet awareness that every movement matters. This is not a grand palace carved into the mountain. It is not a place built for luxury. It is a shelter shaped by necessity, created by people who understand that nature does not negotiate. Outside, the landscape belongs to another world. Vast sheets of ice cover parts of the northern continents. Cold winds move across open plains. Snow rests on the ground for long periods. And the night arrives with a darkness that feels much deeper than the darkness you know today. There are no street lamps glowing in the distance. There are no heated rooms waiting behind a closed door. There is only the cave, the group around you, and the fire. You move closer to the flames because your body already understands something important. Fire is not simply useful. Fire is life. The small circle of warmth it creates feels almost magical. Orange light dances across the rough walls. Shadows move slowly above you, changing shape with every flicker. Someone places another piece of wood onto the fire, and a soft crackling sound fills the space. The smell of burning wood mixes with the scents of animal hides, damp earth, and the faint traces of food prepared earlier. A mainstream historical fact is that humans have used controlled fire for hundreds of thousands of years, although the exact timeline of regular fire use remains debated among researchers. Archaeological evidence shows that ancient people relied on fire for cooking, warmth, protection, and social activities. For an Ice Age community, a dependable flame would have been one of the most important tools available. You sit near the fire and watch the people around you. Their movements are calm because they have repeated this routine many times. Someone checks the fuel supply. Someone adjusts the sleeping area. Someone keeps an eye toward the entrance. Everyone has a role, even during a quiet night. The cave itself feels alive. Every sound travels differently here. A small movement of clothing can echo softly. A cough can bounce from one wall to another. The wind outside creates a low whisper that enters through cracks and openings, reminding everyone that the cold world has not disappeared. You pull a hide closer around your shoulders. It is not the same as wrapping yourself in a modern blanket. The material is heavier, rougher, and connected directly to the animals that shared this environment with humans. Survival means using what the landscape provides. A curious detail from ancient life is that some prehistoric communities use carefully prepared animal hides, not only for warmth, but also for creating more comfortable sleeping surfaces. These materials could be arranged in layers to reduce contact with the freezing ground. It was a simple idea, but simple ideas often determine whether a difficult night becomes manageable. You look toward the entrance of the cave and imagine the temperature outside. The stars above the frozen landscape would shine brightly, untouched by city lights. The air would be sharp and clean. Every breath would remind you that the human body is powerful, but it has limits. Inside, the fire becomes the center of everything. It provides light for conversation. It gives people a reason to gather close. It allows stories to continue after sunset. It creates a small human world surrounded by a much larger and colder one. Historians still argue whether some Ice Age cave occupations were used mainly as short-term hunting shelters, or whether certain locations became more permanent seasonal homes. The answer is difficult because caves preserve some traces of life better than others. Some spaces reveal repeated activity, while others show only brief visits. The truth may be that ancient people moved between different types of shelters depending on weather, resources, and opportunity. You settle down beside the flames and begin to understand the rhythm of this ancient night. There is no rushing to tomorrow. There is no checking the time. There is no glowing screen keeping your attention awake. The hours pass according to natural signals, the brightness of the fire, the sounds of the sleeping group, the movement of the wind outside for a moment. You realize something surprising. This cave is cold, but it is also a place of connection. The people around you are not only surviving the environment, they are creating a small community within it. They share warmth, they share food, they share the responsibility of keeping the fire alive. The flame continues to move gently in front of you. It is fragile, but everyone treats it with respect. A careless moment could weaken it. A lack of preparation could make the night much harder. The fire demands attention, but it rewards that attention with comfort. As your eyes become heavier, you listen to the quiet sounds around you, the soft breathing of others nearby, the gentle movement of the flames, the distant voice of the wind beyond the cave entrance. Thousands of years later, people will still gather around fires for warmth, stories, and companionship. The technology will change, the surroundings will change, but the feeling remains familiar. A small circle of light in a large darkness, and tonight you are inside that circle. The fire has become the first thing you notice when you open your eyes in the darkness. Before you think about the cold stone beneath you, or the icy air moving through the cave, you look toward that small pool of light. It is still there. The flames rise and fall gently, sending warm colours across the walls and reminding everyone that the night has not taken over completely. You slowly sit up, careful not to disturb those resting nearby. The cave is quiet, but it is not silent. There is always something happening. The fire makes soft popping sounds. A piece of wood shifts and releases a small burst of sparks. Someone nearby adjusts a fur covering. Somewhere beyond the entrance, the wind moves across the frozen land. Your attention returns to the fire because everyone in the cave understands the same simple truth. The flame must continue. Keeping a fire alive through a freezing night is not a single task. It is a responsibility shared by the group. Someone must gather fuel before darkness arrives. Someone must understand which materials burn well. Someone must notice when the flames begin to weaken. A fire that disappears in the middle of a winter night is not just an inconvenience. It changes everything. You reach toward the warmth and feel the difference between the air near the flames and the air only a short distance away. The contrast is remarkable. A few steps from the fire, the cold begins returning. The cave remains a cold place. The flame does not transform it into a modern heated room. Instead, it creates a small island of comfort surrounded by a much harsher world. A mainstream historical fact is that fire allowed prehistoric humans to expand into colder environments that would have been extremely difficult to survive without reliable warmth and cooking. Fire helped people process food, stay active after sunset, and protect themselves in unfamiliar landscapes for Ice Age communities. It was one of the foundations that allowed humans to live far beyond warmer regions. You watch as someone carefully adds another piece of wood. The movement is slow and deliberate. There is no wasting fuel. Every branch or piece of dried material represents time spent collecting resources in a frozen landscape. Fuel is valuable. The effort required to maintain a fire continues long before the first spark appears. Modern people often imagine fire as something automatic. We turn a handle, press a button, or switch something on. The warmth arrives almost instantly. In this cave, warmth requires patience. It requires preparation. It requires cooperation. You begin to notice how much knowledge is hidden inside this simple activity. The people around you understand the behavior of flames. They know how wood changes as it burns. They know how to arrange materials to encourage airflow. They know when to protect the embers and when to let the fire grow stronger. This knowledge may not be written in books, but it is carried through experience and memory. A quirky detail from prehistoric archaeology is that some ancient hearths reveal evidence of carefully arranged fire spaces where people repeatedly returned and maintained activity over long periods. These ancient fireplaces are sometimes among the most valuable discoveries because they preserve clues about daily life, including what people burned and how they organized their living areas. You look closely at the hearth and imagine all the nights that happened before this one. Other people sat in similar places. Other families watched similar flames. Other tired travelers rested after long days moving through difficult landscapes. The fire connects you with them. The cave walls may seem empty, but they hold traces of human presence, small marks, scattered remains. And ancient hearths tell stories about people who face challenges that feel almost impossible from a modern perspective. Yet here you are, sitting beside the same element they depended on. Historians still debate whether the importance of fire in Ice Age societies was mainly practical, or whether it also carried deeper symbolic meaning from very early periods of human history. Some researchers suggest that gathering around flames helped create stronger social bonds and encouraged communication. Others believe we should be careful not to assume meanings that cannot be directly proven. The truth may include both possibilities. Fire kept people alive, but it may also have shaped how humans connected with one another. You listen to the voices around you. Perhaps someone tells a story from a previous journey. Perhaps someone explains where the group found useful resources. Perhaps someone simply speaks to pass the time until sleep returns. The fire changes the night without it. Darkness would separate people. With it, people gather together. Faces become visible. Hands can work. Food can be prepared. Stories can continue. The flames create a small stage where human life continues even while the outside world sleeps beneath ice and snow. You imagine what the entrance looks like from inside the cave, beyond the glow of the fire. The opening appears almost like a doorway into another universe. The darkness outside is enormous. The frozen landscape stretches farther than anyone in the cave can see. But inside, there is order, there is warmth, there is the steady rhythm of survival. The fire also changes how people experience time without clocks. The night follows natural patterns, the strength of the flames, the movement of the stars, and the tiredness in your body tell you when hours have passed. You're not measuring minutes, you're feeling them. This slower rhythm may seem unfamiliar today. Many people spend evenings surrounded by artificial light and constant information. The ancient cave offers something completely different. Attention narrows. The senses become sharper. The small details matter. The sound of burning wood matters. The warmth on your hands matters. The person sitting beside you matters. You pull your covering closer and watch the fire continue its quiet work. It does not roar dramatically. It does not announce its importance. It simply remains there, providing what everyone needs. The flame is small, but the responsibility surrounding it is enormous. As the night continues, the people of the cave trust one another and trust the knowledge passed down through generations. The fire remains awake even when most eyes begin to close, and slowly, beneath the flickering light, you begin to understand that this ancient night is not only about surviving the cold, it is about creating a place where humans can belong. The fire continues burning beside you, but now your attention moves lower, toward the place where you will spend the long hours before morning arrives. The cave floor is hard, uneven, and unforgiving. This is not a smooth wooden bed. There is no soft mattress waiting to welcome your tired body. The stone beneath you has existed for thousands of years, shaped by water, wind, and time, and tonight it will remind you of every small decision that separates comfort from discomfort. You begin preparing your sleeping place carefully. In the dim glow of the flames, you watch as others arrange the materials gathered earlier. Animal hides are spread across the cold ground. Plants, grasses, and other natural materials are placed underneath or around the resting area. Every layer has a purpose. The goal is not luxury. The goal is to create a barrier between your body and the freezing surface below. You lower yourself onto the prepared area and immediately notice the difference. The ground is still firm, the cave is still cold, but the sleeping space feels less harsh. The materials soften the stone and help preserve the warmth your body creates. A mainstream historical fact is that many prehistoric people used animal skins and plant materials for clothing, bedding, and shelter improvements. Archaeological evidence from Ice Age sites shows that humans adapted natural resources in creative ways to survive challenging climates. The ability to transform available materials into useful tools and protective coverings was one of the reasons humans were able to thrive in environments that tested the limits of endurance. You adjust the hide around your shoulders and think about how different this experience is from modern sleep. Today, many people carefully choose pillows, blankets, room temperatures, and comfortable furniture. Here, comfort comes from observation and experience. People learn what works because mistakes can be costly. The sleeping area is not created randomly. It reflects knowledge collected over generations. Someone knows which materials provide better insulation. Someone understands where in the cave the air moves less strongly. Someone recognizes which locations remain dry during changing weather. These choices might seem small, but during a long Ice Age winter night, small choices become important. You look around the cave and notice that sleeping arrangements reveal something about the community. People are not scattered everywhere. They remain close together. The warmth of shared bodies helps. The feeling of safety helps. The presence of others reduces the loneliness of a dark winter night. The cave becomes a place where survival and social life meet. A curious detail from prehistoric research is that some ancient cave areas show signs of repeated organization, suggesting that people may have intentionally arranged living spaces for different activities. Certain areas appear connected with fire, others with tools, and others with resting. These patterns remind researchers that Ice Age humans were not simply reacting to their environment. They were planning and organizing their surroundings. You rest your head against the prepared surface and listen. The sounds of the cave are different from the sounds outside. Every movement has a soft echo. The flames create gentle cracks and pops. The breathing of others creates a steady rhythm. Occasionally, someone shifts position or quietly adds fuel to the fire. The cave feels like a living shelter. You might expect such a place to feel frightening, but after spending time inside, another feeling begins to appear: familiarity. The people here know this place. They know where to sleep. They know where to store supplies. They know where the fire burns best. A shelter becomes more than a physical location. It becomes a place filled with memories. Historians still argue whether Ice Age caves should be understood primarily as practical shelters or as places that carry deeper cultural meanings. Some caves contain evidence of daily activities, while others contain remarkable artistic expressions that suggest humans viewed certain underground spaces in special ways. Researchers continue examining how ancient people connected survival, identity, and the landscapes around them. You close your eyes for a moment and imagine the thousands of nights that happened before yours. A child falling asleep near the warmth of the fire, an exhausted hunter resting after a difficult journey, a family gathering close together while winter winds moved outside. The details of individual lives are mostly lost to time, but the basic experience remains understandable. Everyone knows what it feels like to search for comfort after a tiring day. Everyone understands the desire to feel safe while resting. The difference is the environment. Your room may have walls, electricity, and controlled warmth. This cave has stone, fire, and the careful preparation of people who understand their surroundings. You notice another important detail. Sleeping does not mean completely relaxing, even while resting. Awareness remains. Someone may wake to check the flames. Someone may listen to changes outside. Someone may notice unusual sounds. This does not mean everyone is constantly afraid. It means people live with a closer connection to their environment. They understand that nature communicates through signs, a change in wind, a different sound from animals, a shift in temperature. The night requires attention. You pull the covering closer and feel the warmth slowly gathering around you. The firelight moves across the cave walls, creating shapes that disappear and return with every flicker. Your eyes become heavier. There is something peaceful about this moment. The people around you have done what they can. The fire is burning. The sleeping area is prepared. Supplies are nearby. The group has worked together. For now, the cave is enough. Outside, the Ice Age continues. Snow covers the landscape. Cold winds move through valleys and across open spaces. The animals of the frozen world continue their own struggles and journeys. But inside this small shelter, humans have created a place of warmth. Not perfect, not comfortable by modern standards, but safe enough. You settle deeper into the sleeping ground you have prepared. The materials beneath you carry the effort of many hands. The fire beside you carries the knowledge of countless generations, and as the flames continue their quiet dance, you begin drifting towards sleep, surrounded by the simple inventions that allowed humanity to survive the coldest nights. The night grows deeper, and as your body becomes accustomed to the cold stone and the gentle warmth of the fire, your attention begins to move beyond the shelter itself. The cave is no longer just a place where you sleep. It is a small world surrounded by a much larger one. Every sound from outside carries a message. Every movement in the darkness invites your imagination to wonder what is happening beyond the entrance. You lie still beneath the carefully arranged hides and listen. The first sound you notice is the wind. It moves across the frozen landscape with a steady voice, sometimes soft and distant, sometimes stronger as it finds openings in the rocks. The sound travels into the cave, changing as it passes through narrow spaces and rough surfaces. At moments, it almost sounds like a whisper. At others, it feels like the mountain itself is breathing. You understand why the people here pay attention. In a world without weather forecasts or modern communication, the environment speaks through signs, the wind, the temperature, the behavior of animals, and the appearance of the sky all provide information. Survival depends on noticing these details. A widely accepted fact about Ice Age communities is that humans were highly adaptable and developed sophisticated knowledge of their surroundings. They tracked animals, understood seasonal patterns, and adjusted their movements based on available resources. Their survival was not based only on strength. It depended on observation, memory, and cooperation. You listen more carefully. There is another sound outside, a distant movement across the snow. Perhaps an animal passing near the cave entrance. Perhaps something searching for food. The darkness makes every sound feel larger. Your mind fills in the spaces between what you hear and what you know. The people around you do not immediately panic. They are familiar with these sounds. They have lived alongside the animals of this landscape for generations. The wilderness is not an unknown enemy. It is a place filled with challenges, opportunities, and constant relationships. You think about how different the night feels compared with modern life. Today, Many people fall asleep surrounded by familiar noises, the hum of machines, the distant movement of traffic, the quiet sounds of homes nearby. Here, the soundtrack is older, wind moving over ice, animals walking across frozen ground, fire crackling inside stone walls, breathing from people resting together. The world outside feels enormous, but the cave creates a boundary between you and that vast wilderness. A fascinating detail from prehistoric archaeology is that some cave entrances appear to have been selected carefully because their locations offered protection from weather conditions. Ancient people often chose shelters that balanced access to resources with safety from harsh elements. A cave was not automatically a perfect home. Its usefulness depended on location, shape, and relationship with the surrounding landscape. You imagine someone choosing this place long ago. They would have looked at the land around them. They would have considered where animals travelled, where water could be found, where wind entered, and where a fire could be maintained. The decision to stay in one location required careful thinking. The cave itself becomes a lesson in reading nature. You notice how the temperature changes near the entrance compared with deeper areas. The outer section feels colder because the winter air reaches inside. The inner space provides more protection. The fire sits in a position where people can gather while smoke can gradually move away. Nothing is accidental. The arrangement of life here reflects countless observations. Researchers continue to examine how much Ice Age people understood about long-term environmental changes. Some researchers suggest that ancient communities had extremely detailed knowledge of animal migrations and seasonal cycles. Others caution that the evidence is incomplete, and that we should avoid imagining their knowledge as identical to modern scientific systems. What is clear is that they possessed practical understanding built from direct experience. You turn your head toward the fire again. Its glow pushes back the darkness, but only slightly. Beyond the circle of light, the cave remains mysterious. This contrast creates a strange feeling. The darkness is close, but the warmth is closer. Someone near you quietly adds fuel to the flames. The sound is comforting. A simple movement, a familiar routine, a reminder that someone is always watching over the group. The fire does more than warm bodies. It creates confidence. It allows people to rest more deeply because they know the flame is being cared for. The knowledge that others are sharing responsibility changes the entire experience of the night. You imagine being alone here. This same cave would feel completely different. The darkness would seem heavier. The sounds outside would become more unsettling. The fire would feel like a much larger responsibility, but you're not alone. The people around you represent one of humanity's greatest survival advantages: cooperation. The night continues slowly. There is no dramatic moment, no sudden battle between humans and nature. Instead, survival happens through patience. A person adjusts a covering. Someone checks the fire. Someone listens to the wind. Someone sleeps. Someone wakes. The cycle continues. This quiet rhythm is easy to overlook. But most of human history was shaped by moments like this. Not by famous battles or grand monuments, but by ordinary people completing ordinary tasks that allowed life to continue. You close your eyes again and allow the sounds to surround you. The wind outside, the flames beside you, the quiet movements of the group. The frozen world waits beyond the entrance. But inside the cave there is a fragile sense of peace. The night is long. The cold is powerful. But the fire remains. And for now, that is enough. The fire continues to glow. And as the deepest hours of the night pass, you become more aware of the people around you. The cave is not just a shelter protecting separate individuals. It is a shared space where every person depends on the others. Warmth is shared. Food is shared. Knowledge is shared. Even the simple act of sleeping becomes something done together. You look around the dim cave and notice how close everyone remains. There is comfort in this closeness. In the modern world, personal space is often considered important. People have separate rooms, private beds, and individual places where they can retreat. Here, survival creates a different kind of relationship with space. The group stays together because separation would mean losing valuable warmth and support. The fire sits at the center like a silent gathering point. Around it, people rest in a circle of protection. The flames illuminate tired faces, rough clothing, and carefully arranged sleeping areas. The light does not reach every corner, but it reaches enough. You can feel the importance of community. A well-known fact about prehistoric human societies is that cooperation played a major role in survival. Humans are physically vulnerable compared with many large Ice Age animals, but working together allowed groups to hunt, care for children, protect shelters, and share resources. Social bonds were not simply emotional connections, they were practical tools for staying alive. You watch someone wake briefly and look toward the fire. There is no panic, only responsibility. They check the flames, adjust a piece of burning wood, and settle back down. Another person does the same later. The task passes naturally between members of the group. No one needs a written schedule. The rhythm comes from experience and trust. You realize that the fire belongs to everyone. Its warmth touches every person nearby. Its survival depends on everyone nearby. The cave teaches a lesson that modern life sometimes hides. Even the smallest human achievements are often built through cooperation. You pull your covering closer and listen to the quiet breathing around you. The sound is surprisingly comforting. Each person creates a small sign of life within the darkness, together. These sounds transform the cave from an empty space into a home. A curious piece of archaeological evidence is that some prehistoric burial sites and settlements suggest early humans cared for injured or elderly members of their communities who could not easily survive alone. These discoveries have led many researchers to consider how compassion and social responsibility developed among ancient humans. The people sleeping around you are not simply a group trying to survive a harsh environment. They are a community. Someone gathered materials for the sleeping area. Someone prepared food earlier. Someone collected fuel. Someone watched the surroundings. Everyone contributed. You think about how different life feels when every resource requires effort. Today, warmth can arrive instantly. Food can appear with a simple purchase. Light can fill a room with the movement of a switch. Here, every comfort has a story. The warmth from the fire represents hours of preparation. The sleeping place represents knowledge passed through generations. The safety of the cave represents careful decisions made long before sunset. Nothing is automatic. Everything matters. The group's closeness also creates another important thing: learning. Children sleeping nearby absorb the sounds and routines of the adults around them. They learn how to maintain a fire, prepare materials, recognize danger, and understand the landscape. Knowledge does not come from written instructions. It comes from watching, listening, and participating. Some researchers have suggested that long nights around fires may have helped encourage storytelling and the sharing of information. Others are more cautious because direct evidence of ancient conversations is impossible to recover. Still, the idea is appealing. A fire creates a natural place for humans to gather, communicate, and pass memories from one generation to another. You imagine voices rising softly in this cave, a person describing a journey across a frozen valley, a hunter explaining the movements of animals, an elder remembering seasons from many years before, a child listening carefully. The stories are practical, but they are also meaningful. They connect people to the past and prepare them for the future. You notice that the cold outside feels less threatening because you are not facing it alone. That may be one of the greatest differences between ancient survival and modern imagination. When people picture the Ice Age, they often imagine only struggle, They imagine endless snow, dangerous animals, and harsh conditions. Those things were real, but they were only part of the story. There was also laughter. There was also friendship. There was also the simple comfort of sitting beside someone you trusted while a fire burned nearby. Scholars continue exploring how early human groups balanced individual needs with the needs of the community. Some researchers believe strong cooperation was one of the key reasons humans succeeded in difficult environments. Others emphasize that prehistoric groups were likely diverse, with different social systems depending on location and circumstances. The exact details remain uncertain, but the larger picture is clear. Humans survived because they connected. You rest your head again and feel the warmth from the fire reaching you slowly. The person beside you shifts slightly, making sure their covering remains in place. Someone across the fire turns in their sleep. The flames continue moving gently. The cave is filled with small acts of care. No grand gestures, no dramatic announcements, just people looking after one another, outside. The frozen world remains vast and unforgiving. Snow covers the ground. Winds continue their journey across the landscape. Animals search for food and shelter, inside. The group creates something different, a place of belonging, a place where the cold feels smaller, a place where the darkness does not completely win. The fire burns quietly, and the people around it remain close. As your eyes become heavier, you understand that this ancient night is not only a story about survival against nature, it is a story about survival through connection. The fire continues its quiet rhythm beside you, and as the night moves forward, you begin to see the cave in a different way. At first, it seemed like a simple place of protection, a hollow space in the stone where people could escape the worst of the cold, but after spending hours inside, you understand that this place is more than a shelter. It is a home, not a home built with straight walls, polished surfaces, or carefully designed rooms. It is a home shaped by necessity, patience, and countless small decisions. The people who rest here have transformed a natural space into somewhere they can return to, somewhere they recognize, somewhere connected to their memories. You slowly look around the cave again. The walls rise around you, uneven and ancient. The stone carries marks from the passing of time. Some areas are darkened by years of smoke from fires. Some spaces are chosen for storing materials. Some areas are used for resting. The cave has a pattern, a place for everything, a reason for every choice. You realize that the people here are not simply hiding from winter, they are organizing their lives. A widely recognized fact about prehistoric archaeology is that many caves contain evidence of repeated human occupation, showing that ancient people returned to familiar locations when those places offered advantages such as shelter, resources, and protection. These sites provide valuable clues about how humans adapted to changing environments over thousands of years. You imagine arriving at this cave for the first time. The entrance would have been a discovery filled with possibility. Protection from wind, a place to create a fire, a location where a group could rest after travelling across difficult terrain. But making it a home would require more than simply entering. The people would need to understand the space. Where does smoke move? Which areas stay dry? Where is the safest place to sleep? Where should tools be kept? Where should food be prepared? These questions would become part of daily life. You notice how the fire changes the character of the cave. Without the flames, the space would feel cold and distant. With the fire, the stone walls become softer, shadows move gently, the darkness retreats. The cave becomes human. The warmth does not belong only to the temperature. It comes from activity, from voices, from movement, from people creating routines. This is something familiar even today. A house becomes a home because of the people inside it. The objects, sounds, and memories transform a simple structure into a meaningful place. The same process is happening here. Thousands of years ago, a small detail that researchers have discovered from some prehistoric sites is that ancient people sometimes created areas within caves that appear to have specific purposes. Certain spaces were associated with tools, food preparation, or living activities. These findings suggest that prehistoric communities were capable of planning their surroundings rather than simply using spaces randomly. You move your hand across the nearby surface and imagine all the hands that touch this place before yours. Someone carrying wood toward the fire, someone preparing food, someone repairing equipment, someone comforting a child during a storm. The cave has witnessed countless ordinary moments, and those ordinary moments are often the most revealing. History is not only made by famous names or dramatic events. Much of human history exists in quiet places like this: a sleeping area, a fire pit, a carefully placed tool, small traces that show how people lived day after day. You listen as the group slowly settles into the night. The cave has its own routine. The fire requires attention. Supplies need protection. The entrance needs observation. Rest needs to happen. Life continues even during darkness. You think about how strange it would feel to spend an entire night here if you were used to modern comfort. The cold would be noticeable. The darkness would feel overwhelming at first. The lack of familiar sounds might make every movement seem important. But humans are remarkably adaptable. The people who live here do not experience this place as a temporary emergency every night. They understand it. They know its strengths and weaknesses. They have memories connected to it. Historians continue examining how early humans emotionally experienced their environments, and whether certain natural spaces became linked with identity and belonging. Some scholars suggest that long-term relationships with places may have existed much earlier than previously assumed, while others believe the evidence is difficult to interpret with certainty. The answer may never be completely known, but as you sit beside the fire, it's easy to imagine that a place repeatedly connected with survival would become meaningful. The cave holds stories, not written stories, not recorded stories, living stories. The story of a successful hunt, the story of a difficult winter, the story of a child growing older, the story of a family returning after a journey, the story of a fire kept alive through another night. You look toward the entrance once more. The darkness outside no longer feels like an endless threat. It is simply the world beyond the boundary of this home, inside. People have created order. They have created warmth. They have created a place where they can rest. The fire continues glowing, and you begin to understand the relationship between humans and shelters. A shelter protects the body, but a home protects something deeper. It gives people a sense of familiarity in an unpredictable world. Even in the Ice Age, even beneath layers of cold and darkness, humans searched for the feeling, a place to return, a place to gather, a place where the night becomes easier because you're not facing it alone. The flames slowly become softer as the fuel begins to settle. Someone nearby carefully adjusts the wood, keeping the fire alive. The walls of the cave glow for another moment, revealing the shapes of sleeping figures and resting supplies. Then the shadows return, but they are not frightening. The cave is no longer just stone. It is a home, and you are resting inside it. The fire has been burning for many hours now, and the darkness outside has become deeper than before. Inside the cave, the warmth remains. But you begin to understand something important about this ancient night. Fire does not remove every challenge. It creates a small place where humans can face those challenges. The cold is still there. The darkness is still there. The unknown world beyond the entrance is still there. But the fire changes how you experience all of it. You sit quietly and watch the flames move. Sometimes they rise high, reaching upward with bright energy. Sometimes they become smaller, glowing softly among the coals. The fire is always changing, always requiring attention. It reminds you that survival is not one great achievement completed in a single moment. It is a collection of small actions repeated again and again. A person gathers fuel. A person protects the flame. A person prepares food. A person repairs clothing. A person checks on others. The night continues because people continue. A common understanding among historians is that Ice Age humans face significant environmental challenges, including extreme cold periods, changing landscapes, and limited resources in many regions. Yet they survived through flexibility and innovation rather than simply enduring hardship. Their ability to adjust to difficult conditions became one of the defining features of human history. You look around the cave and notice how everyone has learned to live with uncertainty. There's no guarantee that tomorrow will be easy. There's no promise that the weather will improve. There is no certainty that every journey will succeed. But there is preparation. There is experience. There is the confidence that comes from knowing what to do. The fire creates a boundary between comfort and difficulty. But it is not a perfect boundary. Smoke still fills the air. The stone floor still presses against your body. The cold still finds small openings in clothing and coverings. Ancient survival was not about defeating nature completely. It was about finding balance. You think about the relationship between humans and fire. Today, fire is often associated with convenience. A stove heats food. A fireplace creates atmosphere. A candle creates a pleasant feeling. Here, fire is different. It is a companion. It demands care. It rewards attention. It is powerful but fragile. A small mistake could weaken it. A lack of preparation could create problems. Everyone understands this relationship because everyone depends on it. A fascinating archaeological detail is that some ancient hearths show repeated rebuilding and maintenance over long periods, suggesting that people return to the same fire locations again and again. These traces reveal a connection between humans and specific places, showing that keeping a fire alive was not just a practical activity, but part of a larger pattern of daily life. You watch the person nearest the fire adjust the burning wood. The movement is simple. The meaning is enormous. That small action connects this moment to countless nights before and after. Generation after generation learn the same lessons. Protect the flame, respect the cold, work together. The cave teaches patience. There is no quick solution to winter. There is no easy shortcut. Survival happens slowly. You imagine what it feels like to wake each morning knowing that many tasks must be completed before another night arrives. Fuel must be collected. Food must be found. Tools must be maintained. The group must decide where to travel and when to stay. Every decision matters. This constant awareness shapes life. Researchers have different interpretations of how prehistoric people experienced long periods of stress and uncertainty. Some believe ancient communities developed strong emotional resilience because difficult conditions were normal parts of life. Others suggest that surviving repeated hardships may have created different forms of social organization and cultural expression. The evidence continues to inspire discussion about the inner lives of people who lived thousands of years ago. You notice that the cave is not filled with fear. It is filled with concentration. Everyone understands the situation. Everyone knows their role. There is a quiet confidence in the group. This confidence does not come from controlling the world outside. It comes from knowing how to respond when the world changes. The wind grows stronger for a moment. You hear it moving around the entrance, a reminder that winter continues. The flames flicker slightly as the air shifts, and several people wake briefly. They look toward the fire, observe the situation, and relax again. The response is calm. Experience has taught them not every sound requires panic. Not every change means danger. Living close to nature creates a different relationship with uncertainty. People become skilled at reading small signals. A change in the wind, a different sound outside, a shift in the behaviour of animals. The environment constantly communicates. You settle back into your sleeping place and feel the warmth returning slowly to your hands. The firelight creates moving patterns on the cave walls. Your eyes follow them until the shapes begin to blur. There is something deeply human about this scene, long before cities, before written languages, before modern inventions. People sat beside fires at night and looked into the same kind of light. They rested, they talked, they remembered, they hoped. The details of their lives were different from yours, but some feelings remain unchanged. The desire for safety, the need for connection, the comfort of warmth during a cold night. You begin to understand that the struggle against darkness was not only physical, it was also emotional. The fire gave people a sense that they belonged somewhere, even in a world that could be unpredictable and demanding. The flames continue glowing. The cave remains quiet. The night moves forward, and while the frozen landscape waits outside, the small human world inside the cave survives one more hour through patience, cooperation, and the steady light of fire. The fire has become more than a source of warmth now, after many hours beside it. You begin to notice that it has changed the entire feeling of the cave. The flames are not simply pushing away the cold. They are creating a place where thoughts, memories, and imagination can exist. You remain awake for a little longer, watching the gentle movement of light across the stone walls. The shadows seem almost alive. They stretch and shrink as the fire moves. They transform ordinary shapes into mysterious figures, for the people resting here thousands of years ago. These moments may have been filled with stories, conversations, and quiet reflection. The darkness outside made the circle of firelight feel even more important. Within that small glowing space, human minds could wander beyond immediate survival. You think about what might be passing through their thoughts. Perhaps someone remembers a journey across a frozen valley. Perhaps someone thinks about a successful hunt. Perhaps someone wonders when the weather will change. Perhaps someone simply watches the flames and feels the same peaceful feeling that people have experienced around fires for countless generations. A well-established fact from human history is that fire became an important gathering point for early communities. Beyond cooking and warmth, fires created opportunities for communication and social connection. Sitting together around a flame allowed people to exchange information, strengthen relationships, and pass knowledge between generations. The fire does not only keep body alive, it helps keep memories alive. You imagine a person sitting near the edge of the flames, speaking softly to others. The voice does not need to be loud. The cave carries the sound. Every listener is close enough to hear. Stories become another kind of warmth. They cannot stop the wind. They cannot melt the snow, but they can make a difficult night feel less empty. The people in this cave understand that survival is not only about physical needs. The human mind also needs comfort. It needs meaning. It needs moments that remind everyone they are more than creatures simply trying to endure. You look around and see small signs of a shared life. Tools resting nearby. Materials prepared for tomorrow. The remains of a meal. The sleeping forms of family and companions. Each object represents a story. A tool represents someone's skill. A piece of clothing represents someone's work. A fire represents someone's care. The cave is filled with invisible memories. A curious detail from prehistoric studies is that some Ice Age cave sites contain traces of pigments and markings created by humans, suggesting that people were expressing ideas and experiences even during periods of extreme environmental difficulty. These discoveries show that creativity was not something humans developed only after conditions became easy. Imagination existed alongside survival. You find this idea surprisingly comforting. Even in the coldest environments, humans made room for creativity. Even when resources were limited, people created meaning. The firelight touches the walls, and you imagine ancient drawings appearing in the glow, animals moving across stone, symbols whose meanings are now lost, messages left by people who knew they might never be seen by future generations, yet they created them anyway. There is something deeply human about that. You begin wondering how the people here understood the fire itself. Was it simply a tool? Was it something more? Researchers continue discussing how early humans understood natural forces and whether fire carried symbolic importance beyond its practical uses during prehistoric periods. Some researchers suggest that repeated gatherings around flames may have influenced language development, storytelling traditions, and social bonds. Others believe these ideas are difficult to prove because thoughts and beliefs leave fewer physical traces than tools or shelters. The exact answer remains hidden, but the experience feels understandable. Anyone who has sat beside a fire at night knows there is something unique about it. The movement of the flames captures attention. The sound creates calm. The warmth encourages people to stay close. The fire becomes a place where the outside world feels distant. You settle deeper into your sleeping area and allow yourself to imagine the conversations that might have happened here. A younger person learning from an older one, someone explaining how to find resources during winter, someone sharing a memory from many years earlier, someone telling a story simply because everyone enjoys hearing it. The night becomes less about waiting for morning and more about being together. This is something modern people sometimes forget. Before screens and artificial entertainment, humans created their own ways to fill the darkness. They used voices, they used imagination, they used shared experiences. The cave becomes a place of learning. The fire becomes a teacher. The darkness becomes a background for human connection. Outside, the frozen landscape remains enormous. The animals continue moving through the night. The wind continues crossing valleys and open plains. But inside, another kind of world exists, a world made from conversation, memory, and light. You close your eyes briefly and listen to the voices fading into quiet. The fire continues making soft sounds. The warmth reaches your face. The air smells of smoke and earth. The feeling is peaceful, not because the world outside has become gentle, not because the challenges have disappeared, but because humans have created a small place where they can face those challenges together. The flame continues burning, the stories continue being shared, the night continues passing slowly, and as you rest beside the ancient fire, you realize that these people were not only surviving the Ice Age, they were building a human experience within it. The fire burns steadily as the night moves deeper into silence, and your attention slowly shifts toward the world beyond the cave entrance, until now. The flames and the people around you have been the center of your awareness, but the frozen landscape outside has its own life, its own movements, and its own sounds. The Ice Age is not an empty world. It is filled with creatures adapting to the same difficult conditions. You listen carefully. A distant sound moves through the darkness, a crack beneath a heavy step, a faint call carried by the wind, the movement of something searching through the snow. You do not know exactly what created the sound, but you understand that the cave exists within a larger ecosystem. Humans are not separate from this environment. They share the landscape with countless other living beings. You look toward the entrance and see only darkness. The firelight reaches part of the cave opening, but beyond that boundary is a world where your eyes cannot easily follow. The people resting here understand this world better than you do. They know which sounds are ordinary. They know which movements require attention. They know that animals are not simply monsters waiting in the shadows. They are creatures trying to survive the same winter. A recognized fact about Ice Age history is that many large mammals lived alongside humans during this period, including species adapted to cold environments such as woolly mammoths, reindeer, and various large predators. These animals shaped human movement, hunting strategies, and daily decisions because people depended on understanding the behavior of the creatures around them. You imagine the landscape outside. Snow stretches across open ground, frozen rivers cut through valleys, trees stand in some areas, while other regions are dominated by cold grasslands. Animals move according to ancient patterns, a herd searching for food, a predator following traces of movement, a human group watching carefully and learning from the signs around them. The cave provides safety, but it does not remove the connection between humans and the natural world. You notice that even while resting, people remain aware. Someone near the entrance briefly lifts their head. Someone listens. Someone looks toward the fire. Then the group settles again. This calm response comes from familiarity. Living in this environment means understanding that not every sound represents immediate danger. Fear without knowledge can be exhausting. Awareness with experience becomes a survival skill. A fascinating detail from Ice Age archaeology is that evidence from some sites suggests humans and large animals sometimes occupied the same landscapes repeatedly over long periods, creating complex relationships between hunters, prey animals, and predators. The exact nature of these interactions varied greatly depending on location and time. You think about the animals that may have passed near this cave. Perhaps a herd moved across the valley earlier that day. Perhaps a predator followed the same paths used by other creatures. Perhaps birds and smaller animals searched for whatever resources remained available during the frozen season. The night belongs to all of them. You feel a strange connection between the sleeping humans inside the cave and the animals outside. Everyone is responding to the same cold. Everyone is searching for warmth, food, and safety. The difference is that humans have fire. That small advantage changes everything. A flame creates a barrier. It creates light. It creates a sense of control in a world where control is limited. But the relationship between humans and animals is not simply about conflict. It is also about observation. Ancient people learned from animals. They studied movement, migration, and behavior. The natural world provided information. A person who understood the landscape could make better decisions, where to travel, when to move, where resources might be found, which areas were dangerous. The environment was like a constantly changing story, and humans learned to read it. Researchers continue exploring how prehistoric people balanced fear and respect toward large predators. Some interpretations emphasize competition and danger, while others suggest that humans also developed curiosity and cultural relationships with animals. The evidence reveals many different connections rather than one simple story. You glance again toward the darkness. It feels mysterious, but not completely frightening. The cave and the fire create confidence. The people here know that the night will eventually end. The sun will return. The landscape will become visible again. The tasks of survival will continue, for now. The group rests. You imagine how different this experience would be without the sounds outside. A completely silent night might feel unnatural. The movements of animals, the wind, and the changing environment remind everyone that they are part of something much larger. The Ice Age was not only a period of cold, it was a period of interaction. Humans, animals, weather, and landscapes were constantly influencing one another. You listen to the fire again. Its gentle crackling contrasts with the sounds beyond the cave. Inside, outside, warmth, cold, safety, uncertainty. The entire night exists between these opposites. Your eyes grow heavier as you continue listening. The sounds outside become softer. The fire remains steady. The people around you breathe calmly. You begin to understand something important. The cave is not valuable because it completely separates humans from nature. It is valuable because it creates a place where humans can exist within nature. The people here are not escaping the Ice Age. They are living in it, They know the animals, they know the weather, they know the land, they know that survival depends on respecting the world around them. The flames continue glowing beside you. The darkness outside remains vast, but it no longer feels endless. There is a balance. The animals continue their journeys, the wind continues moving, the snow continues covering the land, and inside the cave, humans continue resting beside the fire that allows them to remain part of this ancient world. The fire has carried you through most of the night, and as you remain beside the glowing embers, your attention slowly turns toward another essential part of survival inside the cave food. Warmth keeps the body alive, but energy keeps people moving. Every person resting here understands that the next day depends on the choices made before and during this night. You notice traces of the evening meal nearby. The smell is faint now, mixed with smoke and the natural scent of the cave. The fire has left behind a comforting aroma that reminds you of preparation, patience, and shared effort. A meal in this world is not something that appears instantly. It represents travel, skill, planning, and cooperation. You imagine the work that happened before you arrived at this quiet moment. Someone searched for resources, someone prepared ingredients, someone maintained the fire, someone made sure everyone received enough food. The meal was part of the same system that keeps the flame alive. A commonly accepted fact about Ice Age human life is that people depended on a wide variety of food sources rather than relying on only one type of resource. Their diets could include hunted animals, gathered plants, fish, and other available foods depending on the region and season. Flexibility was essential because environments changed constantly. You look toward the fire and imagine how important cooking must have been in this frozen world. Raw food would not provide the same comfort as a warm meal after spending hours in the cold. Cooking changes more than the taste of food. It makes eating easier, creates warmth, and brings people together around the same place. The fire becomes the center of daily survival once again. You watch someone carefully manage the flames. They understand that cooking requires attention. Too much heat can ruin food. Too little heat wastes valuable time and fuel. The same knowledge that keeps the cave warm also helps transform resources into nourishment. Every part of life connects back to the fire. You think about how modern people experience food. A meal can be something quick, something convenient, something separated from the process that created it. Here, the connection is visible. The food represents the landscape. It represents the animals and plants available nearby. It represents the effort of the people who gathered and prepared it. It represents survival. A curious archaeological detail is that some prehistoric sites contain remains of ancient hearths, with traces suggesting that cooking areas were carefully managed. Researchers can sometimes examine burned materials and food remains to learn how ancient people prepared meals and used fire technology. These small discoveries allow people thousands of years later to glimpse ordinary moments from the distant past. You imagine sitting beside the group during the meal earlier that evening. Perhaps someone shares food with another person who returned tired from a journey. Perhaps a child watches carefully and learns how preparation is done. Perhaps an older member of the group explains which resources are valuable and how they should be used. Food becomes another form of knowledge. It teaches people about seasons. It teaches people about landscapes. It teaches people about cooperation. The cave is not only a place where people sleep, it is a place where they learn how to live. You notice how different the relationship with resources is here. Nothing is wasted because everything requires effort. Fuel, food, clothing, and tools all come from careful decisions. A person cannot simply replace something that is lost. A person must create, repair, and preserve. This creates a deep awareness of value. A piece of wood is not just wood, it is warmth. A piece of hide is not just material, it is protection. A meal is not just food, it is energy for tomorrow. Researchers continue examining how prehistoric communities, organised resource sharing, and whether all groups followed similar systems. Some evidence suggests strong cooperation within communities, while other interpretations emphasize that social arrangements likely differed across regions and periods. The details of everyday life remain complex because many ancient behaviours leave only limited traces. You return your attention to the fire. The flames are lower now, but still alive. The same fire that cooked food earlier continues providing warmth through the night. This connection between eating and surviving creates a powerful image. The fire is not just a tool used at one moment, it is part of a continuous cycle. Gather, prepare, cook, share, rest, repeat. The cycle continues for generations. You imagine how every winter night would reinforce these lessons. Young people would watch older members of the group. They would learn where to find resources. They would learn how to prepare materials. They would learn how to respect the limits of their environment. Knowledge would travel through voices, actions, and memories. The cave would become a classroom. The fire would become the place where lessons were shared. Outside, the frozen landscape remains quiet. Animals continue moving through the darkness. The wind continues crossing the open spaces. Inside, the group has everything needed for this moment: a shelter, a fire, food, companionship. These simple things create a foundation for survival. You settle back into your sleeping place and feel the lingering warmth from the meal and the flames. Your body relaxes slightly. The sounds of the cave become softer. The night is still long. Morning is still far away. But the group has already overcome another challenge. They have transformed limited resources into comfort. They have transformed a cold cave into a place of life. They have transformed fire into something much greater than heat. It has become the center of survival itself. The flames continue moving gently beside you, carrying the memory of every meal prepared here, every person gathered around them, and every winter night when humans looked into the same glowing light and found a reason to continue. The fire continues its quiet work as the night slowly moves toward the hours when darkness feels the deepest. Around you, the cave remains peaceful. Adults rest after the long efforts of the day. Supplies are arranged nearby. The flames create a soft glow across the sleeping area. But your attention begins to move toward the younger members of this ancient community. Children are sleeping here too. Their small movements are almost hidden among the sounds of the cave. A child shifts beneath a covering. Someone moves closer to a parent for warmth. A quiet voice offers reassurance before everyone settles again. Even in the Ice Age, childhood existed. There were games. There was curiosity. There was learning. There was comfort. It is easy to imagine ancient life only as a struggle against cold and hunger. The environment was certainly demanding, but children were not simply miniature survivors. They were growing people surrounded by family, learning, and relationships. You watch the adults nearby and notice something important. Protecting children is not a separate activity from survival. It is part of survival itself. A well-known fact about prehistoric communities is that caring for young members was essential because human children require many years of development before becoming independent. Unlike many animals that become capable of surviving quickly after birth, human children depend on adults for extended periods. This long childhood helped humans develop complex learning and social cooperation. The cave reflects this reality. Children learn by watching. They learn by listening. They learn by participating. A young person near the fire may not fully understand every detail of keeping a flame alive, but they observe the movements. They notice how adults arrange wood. They remember the sounds of different materials burning. They learn which behaviors help the group. Knowledge begins long before adulthood. You imagine a child waking during the night and looking toward the fire. The flames would appear enormous from a small perspective. The shadows on the walls might seem like moving shapes from another world. The sounds outside might feel mysterious. but the presence of family would provide reassurance. Someone nearby is awake, someone is caring for the fire, someone is protecting the group. The cave becomes a place where children experience both wonder and safety. A fascinating detail from studies of prehistoric life is that some archaeological discoveries suggest children participated in activities around caves, including creating marks, learning crafts, and interacting with the same spaces used by adults. These traces provide glimpses into childhood experiences that are often difficult to reconstruct from ancient evidence. You think about how different childhood would feel here compared with today. There are no classrooms with rows of desks. There are no books filled with instructions. There are no screens showing distant places. Instead, the world itself becomes the teacher. The landscape teaches. The animals teach. The fire teaches. The older members of the community teach. Every day provides lessons. A child learns because learning is connected to life. How to recognize useful plants, how to handle tools, how to understand weather, how to contribute, how to care for others. The knowledge is practical, but it is also social. Children are not only learning how to survive alone, they are learning how to belong. You look around the cave and notice that warmth comes from more than the flames. It comes from relationships. A child sleeping near a parent, a family member checking on someone nearby, a group sharing limited resources. The fire creates physical warmth. The community creates emotional warmth. Researchers continue exploring how prehistoric childhood differed across regions and cultures, because evidence about children's daily experiences is limited. Some scholars suggest that children likely contributed to community activities from an early age, while others emphasize that childhood may have included more protected periods of learning and play than previously assumed. The exact balance remains difficult to determine, but one thing is clear. Children were part of these ancient worlds. They laughed, they learned, they grew, they formed memories. You imagine the stories they might have carried later in life, remembering the first time they helped gather materials, remembering nights beside the fire, remembering the sounds of winter storms, remembering the faces of people who cared for them. The cave was not only where they survived, it was where they experienced life. You listened to the quiet sounds around you, the breathing of sleeping children, the movement of the fire, the soft voices of adults. The cave feels less like a place trapped in an ancient past and more like a familiar human space. Families throughout history have always looked for the same things: safety, warmth, food, connection. The details change, but the needs remain. You notice a child moving closer to the firelight. An adult gently adjusts the covering and guides them back to rest. The moment is simple. There is no dramatic story attached to it. Yet this small action represents something important: care. Across thousands of years, humans have protected one another through ordinary gestures, a hand offering help, a voice providing comfort, a person sharing warmth. These moments rarely appear in traditional stories about history because they are not dramatic events. They do not mark the beginning of kingdoms or the end of wars, but they are the moments that allowed humanity to continue. The fire burns softly, the children sleep, the adults remain nearby, the frozen world waits outside, and inside the cave, another generation learns what it means to be human. They learn that survival is not only about facing danger, it is about being cared for. It is about caring for others. It is about sharing the warmth of a small flame in a very large world. As your own eyes become heavier, you settle back into your sleeping place and listen to the ancient rhythms surrounding you. The fire, the breathing, the quiet movement of life. Another hour passes in the cave, carried by the same simple things that have protected people for countless generations. The fire has burned through another long stretch of darkness, and now the hours begin to feel almost endless. Outside the cave, Winter continues its quiet occupation of the land. Snow rests across the ground. Cold air moves through valleys and open spaces. The stars remain hidden behind the darkness above the frozen landscape. Inside, however, time moves differently. You no longer think about the night as something to escape. You begin to understand the rhythm of it, the slow moments, the quiet moments, the moments when nothing dramatic happens. Yet everything important is still taking place. The people around you have learned to live within this rhythm. They understand that winter is not a single event. It is a season that shapes every decision. It changes where people travel, what they eat, how they organize their shelters, and how they spend their evenings. You pull the hide closer around yourself and imagine what it means to experience a winter that seems to stretch endlessly. There is no quick trip outside, no easy way to escape the cold, no guarantee that tomorrow will bring easier conditions. The frozen world demands patience. A broadly accepted fact about Ice Age environments is that many periods were marked by significant climatic changes, with temperatures shifting over thousands of years and affecting the availability of resources. Human communities had to adapt to changing conditions by adjusting their movements, technologies, and ways of using the environment. You look toward the fire and realize that this small flame represents a much larger relationship with winter. Fire allows people to remain active after sunset. Fire allows food preparation during cold seasons. Fire allows groups to gather when outdoor activity becomes difficult. Without it, the long nights would feel far more overwhelming. The winter landscape outside is beautiful, but it is also demanding. The snow reflects the faint light of the sky. Frozen surfaces shine beneath the stars. The air feels clear and endless, yet beauty does not remove difficulty. The people here understand this balance. They appreciate the landscape because it provides resources. They respect the landscape because it can also create danger. You imagine the passing days before this night, the group travelling carefully, searching for useful materials, finding places where animals move, collecting enough fuel, preparing for the colder months. Winter survival is not decided only during the coldest nights. It is shaped by preparation that begins much earlier. A small but interesting detail from prehistoric studies is that some Ice Age communities appear to have planned their activities around seasonal movements of animals and resources, showing that ancient people paid close attention to repeating patterns in nature. Their lives were deeply connected to cycles that modern societies often experience only indirectly. You think about how different time feels here. Today, seasons often become background changes. A person notices the temperature, changes clothing, or adjusts daily routines. For these people, seasons influence nearly everything. The season determines travel. The season affects food. The season shapes social life. The season decides where people can safely spend time. Winter is not simply weather. Winter is a powerful force. You listen to the fire crackling and imagine the conversations that happen during these long evenings. Perhaps someone remembers a warmer season. Perhaps someone talks about places visited before. Perhaps someone explains plans for the future. Long nights create opportunities for reflection. When there are fewer hours spent travelling or gathering resources, people have more time together. The darkness outside creates a reason to stay close. Researchers continue investigating how Ice Age humans responded emotionally and socially to long periods of harsh climate. Some interpretations suggest that challenging environments strengthened cooperation and encouraged shared traditions. Other researchers point out that ancient communities were diverse and may have developed many different responses depending on their surroundings. The exact experiences varied, but every group had to answer similar questions. How do we stay warm? How do we find enough food? How do we protect the young and vulnerable? How do we continue when conditions become difficult? You watch the people near the fire and realize that survival is built from countless answers to these questions. There is no single heroic moment, There is no magical solution. There is only persistence. The fire must be maintained every night. The shelter must be prepared every day. The group must continue working together. The winter that feels endless is overcome one small action at a time. You notice the quiet strength of the people around you. They are not fighting the cold with anger. They are adapting. They are learning. They are continuing. This may be one of the most important lessons from ancient life. Humans have always existed within environments they could not fully control. The ability to adjust, cooperate, and create solutions allowed communities to survive periods of uncertainty. The flames move gently. The cave walls glow. The night continues. You imagine looking outside at the frozen landscape after many hours of darkness. The world would appear unchanged. The snow would still cover the ground. The wind would still move across the land. But inside the cave, something important has happened. Another night has passed. Another fire has been protected. Another meal has been shared. Another generation has learned. The endless winter does not defeat these people because they do not measure survival by comfort alone. They measure it by continuation, by waking up, by preparing again, by keeping the flame alive. You settle deeper into your resting place and listen to the steady sounds around you. The fire, the breathing of companions, the quiet movement of the cave. Outside, the Ice Age remains vast and powerful. Inside, humans create their own small world of warmth. And as the darkness slowly begins to weaken somewhere beyond the entrance, you realize that even the longest winter night eventually moves toward morning. The night continues its slow journey, and beside the fire you begin to notice something deeper than the simple acts of staying warm and finding shelter. The people around you have survived this long because they carry knowledge, not written knowledge stored in books or carved into permanent records, but knowledge remembered through movement, observation, and experience. Every action inside the cave contains a lesson. The way someone arranges wood near the fire, the way someone chooses a sleeping place, the way someone prepares materials, the way someone listens to the sounds outside. You realize that survival in this frozen world depends on understanding things that cannot be learned in a single day. They must be practiced. They must be remembered. They must be passed from one person to another. You watch an older member of the group sitting near the flames. Their movements are calm and confident. They do not need to think about every small action, because years of experience have shaped their instincts. They know the fire, they know the cave, they know the landscape beyond the entrance. This knowledge is a form of wealth. A generally accepted idea among historians is that prehistoric humans developed complex systems of learning and adaptation that allowed them to survive in a wide variety of environments. Their success was not only due to physical abilities, but also their capacity to observe, communicate, and share useful information. You look around and understand that the cave is filled with invisible knowledge. Someone knows how to recognize safe materials for burning. Someone knows how to preserve food. Someone knows where animals travel during certain seasons. Someone knows how to repair damaged tools. Someone knows how to comfort a child during a frightening night. Each person contributes something valuable. The community survives because knowledge is distributed. You imagine how a young person growing up here would slowly absorb these lessons. At first, they would simply watch. They would observe adults performing tasks without fully understanding why. Over time, patterns would become clear. They would learn that certain actions matter. They would understand that preparation creates safety. They would discover that the environment is not random. The land has patterns. The weather has signs. Animals have behaviors. Fire has rules. A small curious detail from archaeological research is that some prehistoric tools show evidence of careful manufacturing techniques that required teaching and practice. Certain stone tools were not created through simple trial and error, but involved repeated methods passed between generations. This suggests that ancient people had systems for sharing technical knowledge. You think about how impressive that is. A person sitting beside this fire is connected to countless people who came before. The skills used tonight are not invented from nothing. They are inherited, improved, adapted. The same basic lessons may have been repeated around other fires across the Ice Age world. You listen to the quiet sounds of the cave and imagine knowledge travelling through voices. An older person explaining, a younger person asking, a family member demonstrating, a group remembering. Before written language, memory itself was a powerful tool. Stories could carry instructions. Songs could preserve information. Repeated actions could teach skills. The human mind became a place where survival knowledge was stored. Researchers continue studying how much information prehistoric oral traditions may have carried, and how accurately knowledge could be preserved across many generations. Some scholars believe complex oral systems allowed ancient communities to maintain detailed environmental understanding, while others suggest that information likely changed as conditions and cultures changed. The truth may include both possibilities. Knowledge survives, but it also evolves. You look at the fire again and notice how similar it feels. The flame is never exactly the same. Every piece of wood changes it. Every moment creates something slightly different. Human knowledge works in a similar way. Each generation receives what came before and adds something new. The cave becomes a place where this process continues. A child watching tonight may become the person teaching others many years later. A simple lesson learned beside the fire may influence decisions far into the future. This connection between past and future gives the night a different feeling. You're not just witnessing survival, you're witnessing continuity. The people here are part of a long human story. They are one link in a chain stretching backward and forward through time. You think about the modern world and how much knowledge surrounds you. Technology, science. And written records preserve information in countless ways. Yet the foundation of all of that comes from the same human ability seen here. The ability to learn, the ability to share, the ability to remember. The fire continues burning as the group rests. No one announces that an important lesson is taking place. No one realizes that thousands of years later, people will study these moments. Life simply continues. Someone maintains the flame. Someone protects the supplies. Someone prepares for tomorrow. Someone learns. That is how history is created, not only through extraordinary events, but through ordinary people repeating meaningful actions. You feel the warmth of the fire reaching your face and allow yourself to become part of the quiet atmosphere. The cave no longer feels like a distant ancient place. It feels familiar. The concerns are different, but the emotions are recognizable. Wanting safety, wanting connection, wanting to care for the people around you. The people here understand something that remains true today. Survival is easier when knowledge is shared. A single person may struggle. A community can endure. The flames continue glowing, and the older members of the group slowly rest. The younger ones continue learning, even while sleeping near the sounds and smells of the ancient shelter. Outside, the frozen world waits. Inside, knowledge remains alive. The fire burns. The people remember, and another night of human survival continues beneath the ancient stone ceiling. The fire has become a familiar presence now, after so many hours beside it. You no longer see it as only a flame. It has become a companion through the darkness, a reminder of human creativity, patience, and determination. The small glow in front of you represents something much larger than warmth. It represents a turning point in the human relationship with the natural world. You watch the embers move gently. A small piece of wood collapses inward. A brief spark rises. The flame changes shape, yet it continues. That simple continuation carries a powerful meaning for the people inside this cave, Fire is one of the greatest achievements available to them. It transforms the experience of the night. It changes how they eat, how they rest, how they communicate, and how they imagine the future. You think about the first moments when humans learned to control fire. It is difficult to know exactly how this relationship began. Perhaps early humans first used naturally occurring flames from lightning strikes or wildfires. Perhaps they slowly developed methods to maintain and create fire themselves. What matters is what happened afterward. Humans did not simply discover fire, they built a relationship with it. A widely recognized fact from archaeological research is that controlled fire use became a major advantage for early humans because it provided heat, light, protection, and the ability to cook food. This technology influenced human expansion into colder environments and changed daily life in profound ways. You look around the cave and see the evidence of that transformation. Without fire, this shelter would be a very different place. The darkness would dominate. The cold would feel stronger. The hours after sunset would become far more limited. With fire, the cave becomes active. People can prepare food. People can create tools. People can gather together. People can share stories. The flame creates time. It allows humans to continue living after the sun disappears. You imagine the world before reliable fire use. The night would have been a much more powerful boundary. Darkness would bring activity to an end much earlier. Cold environments would become far more difficult to inhabit. Fire changes the relationship between humans and time itself. The evening is no longer simply a period of waiting. It becomes another part of life. You notice the respect people show toward the flame. They do not treat it casually. Every person understands its importance. They approach it carefully. They maintain it patiently. This respect is understandable. The fire provides comfort, but it also requires responsibility. A forgotten flame can disappear. A poorly managed fire can create problems. This same element that protects people must be handled wisely. A remarkable detail from ancient hearth studies is that some prehistoric fire sites reveal repeated use over very long periods, suggesting that maintaining a reliable fire location was an important part of community life. These hearths are more than places where things were burned. They are traces of human routines and relationships. You imagine countless evenings connected to this same idea. Different people, different seasons, different stories, but the same glowing center. The fire becomes a bridge between generations. A child watching flames today may grow into an adult who teaches the same skills tomorrow. A person learning how to care for the hearth becomes part of a tradition much older than themselves. Researchers continue examining whether early humans viewed fire mainly as a practical invention, or whether it also became connected with symbolic ideas about protection, community, and transformation. Some interpretations emphasize the everyday usefulness of fire, while others suggest that gathering around flames may have influenced human imagination and social development in deeper ways. Perhaps the answer is not one or the other. Perhaps fire was both practical and meaningful. You understand why. Sitting beside a fire naturally changes the way people feel. The movement of flames captures attention. The warmth relaxes the body. The shared light encourages people to remain together, even today. People gather around fires for many of the same reasons. The technology has changed, but the experience remains familiar. You return your gaze to the people resting nearby. They are surrounded by a tool that has shaped human history, not a tool made of stone, not a tool carried in the hand, a living force that must be maintained. Fire teaches patience, it teaches preparation, it teaches cooperation. The people here know that survival depends on respecting small things, a little warmth, a little light, a little food, a little knowledge. Together, these things become enough. You settle back into your sleeping place and listen to the soft sounds of the hearth. The fire creates a gentle rhythm that almost feels like breathing. The night is still cold. The cave is still ancient. The outside world is still vast. But the presence of fire changes everything. It reminds you that humans have always searched for ways to create comfort in difficult places. From frozen caves to modern homes, people have carried the same desire across time: to be warm, to be safe, to gather together. The flames continue glowing, and you begin to understand why fire holds such an important place in human memory. It was never only about survival, it was about possibility. It gave people more time, more choices, more connection, and in this ancient cave, beside this ancient flame, you experience the same simple truth that shaped human history. A small light can change the entire world around it. The fire continues burning as the darkness outside begins to feel slightly different. The night is not over yet, but something has changed. The deepest silence has passed. The cold remains. The wind still moves across the frozen landscape, and the cave is still surrounded by the Ice Age world outside. But you can feel that morning is approaching. You slowly become aware of the small movements around you. Someone begins waking. Someone checks the fire. Someone adjusts the materials near the sleeping area. The cave begins shifting from a place of rest into a place of preparation. The long night beside the flames is ending. You watch as the first responsibilities of the morning begin. The fire must be maintained. Supplies must be checked. The sleeping area must be organized. The group must prepare for another day. There is no sudden transformation. No bright moment when everything becomes easy. Life continues through small actions, just as it did during the night. A commonly accepted fact about prehistoric communities is that daily survival required constant effort and planning. People needed to manage food, tools, clothing, shelter, and movement across landscapes where conditions could change quickly. A successful day depended on preparation that often began long before the first task was completed. You look toward the entrance of the cave. The darkness outside is slowly becoming softer. A faint change in the sky suggests that the sun will eventually return. The frozen landscape that seemed endless during the night will soon become visible again. The people here know this transition well. Night is a time for protection and rest. Morning is a time for movement and work. You imagine stepping outside with them. The air would immediately feel different from the warmth near the fire. The cold would touch your face. Your breath would appear in the air. The ground would feel hard beneath your feet. The world would be quiet, but not empty. Tracks might appear across the snow. Animals may have passed during the night. The landscape would contain clues. The people would read those clues because understanding the environment is essential. A small but interesting archaeological discovery is that some prehistoric sites contain evidence of repeated seasonal visits rather than permanent occupation throughout the entire year. This suggests that many groups moved according to changing conditions, returning to places when those locations offered advantages. The cave may have been one important stop within a larger journey, a place to recover, a place to gather, a place to survive difficult nights. You think about the emotions connected with leaving such a shelter after a night beside the fire. There may be relief, there may be confidence, there may also be uncertainty. The outside world remains challenging, the fire provided safety. But the day requires new decisions. Where should the group travel? What resources are available? What signs does the landscape reveal? Every morning brings new questions. Researchers continue exploring how mobile Ice Age communities balanced familiarity with movement. Some studies suggest that people developed strong connections with specific landscapes even while traveling frequently. Other interpretations emphasize the importance of flexibility and constant adaptation. The truth is likely complex. Humans have always found ways to belong in changing environments. You return your attention to the hearth one more time. The fire that protected everyone through the night now prepares to become part of the morning. Some embers may be preserved for later, some fuel may be added. The relationship with fire continues. It does not end when the sun rises. The flame has been part of every stage. The evening meal, the shared conversations, the sleeping hours, the quiet moments of reflection, the beginning of a new day. You realize that this is why fire became such a powerful symbol in human history. It connects different moments of life. It connects people. It connects generations. The same basic experience is repeated countless times. Someone sits beside a fire. Someone protects the flame. Someone shares warmth. Someone learns. Someone remembers. You look around the cave and imagine all the people who experience mornings like this before you. Their names are unknown. Their voices are gone. But their actions remain visible through the traces they left behind. The fire marks, the tools, the shelter, the evidence of lives carefully lived. History often focuses on major events, but places like this reveal something quieter. They show how ordinary people created stability in uncertain times. A person waking beside a fire may not have known they were part of a larger human story. They were simply beginning another day. Yet that ordinary beginning is exactly what allowed humanity to continue. You feel the warmth fading slightly as attention shifts toward the morning tasks. The cave is no longer only a sleeping place. It becomes a starting point. The group begins moving. The day begins. The frozen landscape waits. You imagine walking away from the entrance and looking back at the cave. It appears small compared with the enormous world surrounding it. A simple opening in stone. A small place beside a vast wilderness. But inside that space, something remarkable happened. People created safety. They created community. They created a home. They kept a fire alive through the night. And that was enough. You take one final moment to remember the darkness, the sounds, the warmth, and the quiet companionship that filled the hours before sunrise. The night beside the fire was not easy. It was not comfortable by modern standards, but it was meaningful. It was a moment when humans demonstrated one of their greatest abilities, the ability to adapt, the ability to cooperate, the ability to create light in a cold world. As morning arrives, the fire continues glowing behind you, a small reminder of the night that has passed, a small promise that warmth can return again. The morning has arrived, but the memory of the night remains with you. As you stand near the entrance of the cave and look back toward the fading glow of the fire, you understand that this shelter was never only about escaping the cold. It was about creating a place where humans could endure, remember, and continue. The first light of day reaches across the frozen landscape. The world outside slowly reveals itself, snow-covered ground, distant hills, open spaces where animals have moved during the night. The same environment that seemed mysterious in darkness now appears clear and familiar. Yet the cave still holds something special. Inside those stone walls, hours of human life have passed. People rested. People shared warmth. People protected one another. People kept the fire alive. You think about how many nights like this disappeared into the past. Most of them left no written record. No one recorded the names of the people who woke beside these flames. No one wrote down their thoughts as they watched the fire move through the darkness. But traces remain. The remains of hearths, the tools left behind, the marks of human activity. These small pieces allow us to imagine their experiences. A widely recognized fact in archaeology is that material remains from prehistoric sites provide important information about how ancient humans lived, including their diets, technologies, movements, and relationships with their environments, even without written records. Physical evidence can reveal remarkable details about past societies. You look at the cave differently now. At first, it appeared to be simply a shelter. Now it feels like a place filled with human stories. Every part of the cave reflects decisions: the location of the fire, the arrangement of sleeping areas, the placement of tools, the choice to return here again and again. These decisions show careful understanding. They show adaptation. They show creativity. You imagine the final moments before leaving. Someone checks the remaining supplies. Someone makes sure the fire is safe. Someone gathers materials that can be carried. The group prepares to return to the landscape. The cave becomes quiet again, but it is not empty. The warmth of human presence remains in your imagination. A curious detail from prehistoric research is that some ancient cave locations contain evidence suggesting repeated visits across many generations, meaning certain places may have held long-lasting importance for human communities. These locations were not only practical shelters but could become familiar landmarks connected with memory and tradition. You wonder what it would feel like to return to this cave years later. Would the entrance look the same? Would the fire be built in the same area? Would familiar memories return immediately? Places become meaningful because of what happens inside them. A simple shelter can become a place of belonging. A stone wall can become part of a story. A fire can become a symbol of survival. The people of the Ice Age may have lived in a world very different from yours, but their relationship with places feels surprisingly familiar. People today also attach memories to homes, a childhood room, a family gathering place, a favorite corner where someone feels comfortable. The materials change, the emotions remain. You look back at the cave one more time and think about the fire itself. For many hours, it was the center of everything. It provided warmth during the coldest part of the night. It allowed food to be prepared. It created a place for communication. It gave people confidence. The flame was small compared with the frozen world outside, yet its importance was enormous. Researchers continue discussing how early human communities developed attachments to landscapes and shelters. Some researchers believe repeated use of specific places created strong cultural connections, while others suggest that practical advantages were often the main reason people returned. The relationship between humans and places likely included both necessity and meaning. You begin walking away from the cave in your imagination. The cold air touches your face. Your footsteps leave marks across the frozen ground. Behind you, the cave becomes smaller. Ahead, the landscape stretches endlessly. This movement represents another important part of Ice Age life. Humans were not only survivors hiding from difficult conditions, they were explorers, travelers, observers. They moved through changing environments and discovered ways to live within them. The night inside the cave was one moment in a much larger journey. The fire was one tool among many. The shelter was one place among many. The community was part of a much longer human story. You think about how remarkable it is that a simple activity like sleeping beside a fire connects people across thousands of years. The same basic needs remain: warmth, rest, safety, connection. The details of life have changed, but these foundations have remained. The people who lived during the Ice Age were not distant figures from an unreachable past. They were humans experiencing ordinary moments. They became tired. They sought comfort. They cared for family. They watched the flames. They waited for morning, just like people today. The frozen world continues outside your imagination, but the cave remains a place of warmth in your memory, a place where humanity showed its ability to adapt, a place where a small fire pushed back a huge darkness, a place where survival became possible because people worked together. As the day grows brighter, you leave behind the quiet sounds of the night, the crackling fire, the sleeping breaths, the whispers inside stone walls, but the feeling remains, the understanding that even in the harshest environments, humans have always searched for ways to create comfort and connection. The fire may eventually fade, the cave may become silent, the footprints may disappear, but the story continues, The fire has become smaller now, but its meaning has grown larger. The flames that once seemed like the only barrier between you and the frozen night now feel like a connection between past and present. You sit quietly beside the remaining glow and think about everything this small source of warmth has carried through the darkness. It carried voices, it carried memories, it carried survival. It carried humanity through another difficult night. The cave around you is becoming quieter. The sounds that filled the hours before morning have faded. The wind outside continues its journey across the frozen landscape. But it no longer feels as powerful as it did when darkness first arrived. You understand why. The night has been completed. The people inside this cave have done what countless generations before them learned to do. They prepared. They adapted. They worked together. They endured. A commonly accepted understanding among historians is that the ability of humans to cooperate and adapt was one of the most important reasons our species survived changing environments throughout prehistory. Physical strength alone was not enough. Knowledge, communication, and teamwork allowed people to overcome challenges that would have been impossible for individuals facing the natural world alone. You look at the fire one last time, and imagine all the people who depended on similar flames. Different caves, different landscapes, different seasons, but the same human desire for warmth and safety. The fire was never just a tool. It was a companion during uncertain times. It was a gathering place. It was a reminder that humans could create comfort even in difficult conditions. You think about the person who first carried a flame into a cold shelter thousands of years ago. They could not have known how important that discovery would become. They could not have imagined the countless generations that would continue using fire in different forms, yet the impact remained. A curious detail from prehistoric studies is that some ancient hearths preserve traces of repeated activity, allowing researchers to reconstruct parts of daily life from simple remains. Burned materials, ash layers, and changes in hearth structures can reveal how people managed fire and how important these spaces became within communities. These discoveries are like quiet messages from the past. They do not tell complete stories. They do not reveal every thought or feeling, but they offer small windows into human experiences. Through them, you can imagine someone sitting where you're sitting now, watching the same kind of light, feeling the same warmth, listening to the same quiet sounds. The distance between your world and theirs suddenly feels smaller. Researchers continue discussing how ancient humans understood fire beyond its practical uses. Some interpretations suggest that fire may have influenced early symbolic thinking, social traditions, and storytelling practices. Others believe the strongest evidence points toward everyday survival needs rather than deeper meanings. The relationship between humans and fire was likely shaped by both necessity and imagination. You look around the cave and realize that both ideas can exist together. Fire kept people alive. Fire also gave people a reason to gather, and when people gathered, they shared more than warmth. They shared experiences. They shared lessons. They shared memories. This may be one of the most important parts of the story. The frozen world was challenging. But humans did not face it as isolated individuals. They created communities. They created routines. They created places where life could continue. The cave was not powerful because of the stone. The fire was not powerful because of the flame alone. Together, they created a space where humans could belong. You imagine the final moments before everyone leaves for the day. The group moves carefully. The sleeping materials are gathered. Tools are collected, the last preparations are completed. The cave slowly returns to silence. But the silence is different now. It is not an empty silence. It is a silence filled with memory. The walls have witnessed another night. The ground has supported another generation. The fire has warmed another group of people. You step away from the entrance in your imagination and look back one final time. The cave appears small against the enormous frozen landscape. The mountains rise in the distance. The wind crosses the open land. The world continues moving. Yet inside that small shelter, something remarkable happened. Humans created a place where darkness could be faced. They created warmth where there was cold. They created connection where there was uncertainty. They created hope. You think about how easy it is to overlook simple things today. A warm room, a comfortable bed, a safe place to sleep, a light that appears instantly. These things feel ordinary because modern life has made them common. But this night reminds you that comfort has a history. Every invention, every improvement, every moment of safety comes from generations of people searching for better ways to live. The people in this cave were not living simple lives because they lacked intelligence or imagination. They were solving difficult problems with the tools available to them. They understood their environment. They respected its challenges. They found opportunities within it. The final glow of the fire remains for a moment longer. You watch the gentle movement of the embers. You hear the quiet sound of warmth fading into morning, and you remember the lesson of this ancient night. Human survival has never depended on avoiding every hardship. It has depended on creativity. It has depended on cooperation. It has depended on the ability to create light when the world feels dark. The cave, the fire, and the people who gathered around it are now part of a story stretching across thousands of years. A story about endurance, a story about connection, a story about the simple but powerful act of keeping a flame alive. Now the cave becomes quiet, and the journey through the frozen night slowly begins to fade. You no longer hear the sharp wind outside or the distant movements of animals across the snow. Instead, you return to the gentle memory of the fire, the soft glow on the stone walls, and the warmth shared by people who live beneath a very different sky. Imagine yourself resting once more beside that ancient flame. The night has passed. The cold has weakened, the darkness has disappeared. Only the peaceful feeling remains. You remember the careful hands that protected the fire. You remember the quiet voices that filled the cave. You remember the simple shelter that became a home. You remember that even in the harshest environments, humans found ways to create comfort. The world outside was enormous and unpredictable, but inside that small circle of light there was safety, friendship, and belonging. The fire continues glowing softly in your imagination. The flames rise gently. The warmth surrounds you. The sounds become quieter. The cave becomes a peaceful place of rest. Across thousands of years, people have searched for the same things you seek tonight. A place to feel safe, a moment to be calm, a little warmth in a cold world. The ancient travellers of the Ice Age are gone, but their story remains. Their courage, patience, and cooperation continue through every generation that followed. Now you can let the cave disappear slowly. Let the stone walls fade. Let the fire become a distant golden glow. Let the sounds of the ancient world become softer and softer. You are warm. You're comfortable. You are resting. The night is quiet. The fire is gentle. And somewhere in the distance, beyond the frozen landscape of the past. Morning arrives, sleep peacefully, dream softly, and remember that even the smallest light can guide humanity through the darkest night. End of script.